So, I've been a Halsey fan for a while now, but recently I feel like I need to get some things off my chest. On October 14th, 2020, Halsey released a video to her YouTube channel titled, Be a King. It's mostly an ad, but despite that, it's a moving exploration of fame, imposter syndrome, and it serves as an origin story for herself and her name. But I'm not here to talk about any of that. I'm here to talk about trains. See, this video is set in the New York City subway. This is actually where Halsey gets her stage name from. Halsey is the name of a stop in Brooklyn, and it's also an anagram of her first name, Ashley. If you know anything about me, it's that I've been obsessed with trains my whole life. I'm writing a blog now about the secrets of New York City subway, and one of the secrets is that Halsey took her name from a stop in Brooklyn. But here's the problem. There were two Halsey Street stations in Brooklyn, one on the L train and one on the JZ train. Now, Halsey hasn't specified which of the two stations she took her name from, and when I tweeted at her asking, she didn't reply, so finding out which one it is has become a bit of an obsession for me. Now imagine my excitement when Halsey releases a video explaining the origin of her name. Mystery solved, right? Well, yes, but the video focuses quite a bit on the subway, and as someone who has a lot of knowledge about the subway, I thought it would be fun to go through the video pointing out some of the things that a casual observer may have missed. We open on Halsey entering the subway at the Bowery station on the J and Z trains. This suggests that she took her name from the Halsey stop on the same two lines. We get this cool shot of an older her turning into a younger her as her name rearranges from Halsey to Ashley. This type of train is called an R32, and it's the oldest continually serving model of subway currently still in service in New York City. This becomes important right here. We see a shot of a different kind of car, that being an R143. Not only are there inconsistencies with the types of trains, there are also inconsistencies with the types of stations. This is an IND station. To explain what that means, we need a bit of a history lesson. The modern-day subway system is the amalgamation of three separate companies that each built their own smaller systems that were unified in 1940. Two of the three were private companies. The first was the IRT, or Interborough Rapid Transit, which built the number lines. The other was the BMT, or Brooklyn Manhattan Transit, which built some of the letter lines. The other letter lines were built by the third, city-owned IND, or Independent Subway. In general, the IND built the first half of the alphabet up to the letter G, and the BMT built all the others, although there is a bit of overlap between these two systems. The point of all of that was to get here. Because the subway was built by different companies, many of the stations are built in the style of their respective company. One of the most distinctive styles is the IND stations, which are all pretty bland, but have a colored band running along the wall and simple black tiles with the station name. You can see both of those in the clip here. The colored bands were actually designed to be a method of navigation within the subway, as the colors would change at each express station as you got further from Manhattan, allowing riders to judge how far they had ridden. That's how we can tell that this is an IND station. I also have a good idea about which station it is, but we'll get to that later. The fact that it is an IND station is important, since the J and Z trains, which we saw Halsey enter at Bowery, were built by the BMT. Also, both of the Halsey stations, the one on the J and Z and the one on the L, were built by the BMT. So there's no reason for her to be in an IND station. These shots only last for a few seconds, but there's a lot to talk about here. We first get a close-up shot of a C train passing, then it cuts to Halsey throwing some papers at the wall while another train passes in the background. While the video is cut to make it look like they're the same train, are actually two different types of train. The first is probably an R179, although the clip passes too quickly to tell, but the second is very clearly an R32. If you remember from earlier, the R32 is the oldest type of train still in operation, whereas the R179 is the newest. We can also see that the sign above her says Hoyt-Schermerhorn Street. Hoyt-Schermerhorn Street is a station on the A, C, and G trains, which was built by the IND, not the BMT. This station is notable for having two abandoned platforms, which I believe this video is filmed on. The abandoned platforms and tracks actually make a great place to film because film crews can park up and have a train there without delaying the normal operations of the subway. In fact, many movies, TV shows, commercials, and music videos are filmed in the subway, often using abandoned spaces. The Joker movie, for example, which was filmed using the lower level of the 9th Avenue station on the D train, or Michael Jackson's Bad music video, which was filmed in the mezzanine level of Hoyt-Schermerhorn, where we are now. The shot of Halsey standing on the staircase as the papers fall around her is very cool, but it's wrong. If this station was fully active, both trains would be moving towards the camera, not away from, as in the case of the train on the left. What's probably happening here is that the train on the right is a regular in-service C train, but the train on the left was a specifically hired one for this shoot. As the regular C train leaves the station, they moved the train on the left at the same speed in order to create this cool effect. Jumping ahead in the video a bit, we get a number of establishing shots showing us that we've crossed the Williamsburg Bridge and are now in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. The J and Z trains do cross this bridge, and it's quite a nice ride, so this checks out. Also, in the shot of her looking out of the window as the train enters daylight, you can see the reflection is the 2015 version of Halsey, whereas the person standing there is the 2020 version of Halsey. That has nothing to do with trains, I just thought it was very cool. Unfortunately, the real problems in this video happen in the last 23 seconds. We first see Halsey stepping out of an R32 train with an R160 across the platform. This is where we need a little bit more history. The BMT built a number of elevated lines, which the station clearly is. The layout of those lines often had two outer tracks, which would be local tracks, and one middle track, which during each rush hour would have express trains going either to or from Manhattan. At express stations, the platforms would be in between the local tracks and the express track. That means the train Halsey stepped out of is the express train, and the train across the platform is the local. The line we're supposedly on is called the BMT Jamaica line. It's an elevated line between the Williamsburg Bridge and Jamaica, Queens, which the J and Z trains use. However, there are only two express stations in this layout on that entire line, one at Myrtle Avenue and one called Broadway Junction. For those of you that know the subway, you should be able to instantly tell that this is very clearly neither of those two stations. For a start, both of those two stations have an upper level, which we don't see here. Since drones are illegal in New York City, here are some images from Google Maps, which show the layout of both of these stations. It should be immediately apparent now that where Halsey is cannot be either of those two stations. So if this shot wasn't taken at either of those two stations, where was it taken? There are in fact just 5 other stations with this same layout that are served by letter trains. They are Astoria Boulevard on the N and W trains, 62nd Street and Bay Parkway on the D train, and 18th Avenue and Kings Highway on the F train. So let's narrow it down. Off the bat, it can't be either of the two D train stops because the R160, which we see across the platform, doesn't run on the D train. It also can't be Astoria Boulevard on the N train because looking north from that station, you would see the Hellgate Bridge, which carries Amtrak trains, and south of that station, you would see the skyscrapers of Long Island City, neither of which appear in this shot. That leaves the two F train stations, 18th Avenue and Kings Highway, as the only two places this shot could have been taken. Well, we can rule out Kings Highway because immediately south of the station is a large structure that spans over the tracks, which is nowhere to be seen in this shot. And immediately north of the station, the tracks curve pretty sharply, again, not visible here. So, it's 18th Avenue, not on the JZ lines, but it does make sense since the middle track at 18th Avenue isn't used in regular service. So the film crew could bring the train there and leave it for as long as they wanted without interrupting any regular subway service. We next see an R32 train pull away, revealing young Halsey sitting under a sign that says Halsey Street. As we've already established, this isn't Halsey Street, it's 18th Avenue on the F train. What makes this more unfortunate is that the real Halsey Street on the JZ trains is a local station, so there wouldn't even be this middle platform for a train to pull away. We then see Halsey leave the train station, and in fact, this shot was taken outside of Halsey Street Station, the real one on the JZ trains. You can tell this because in the background, the street sign says Jefferson Avenue. Jefferson Avenue is a street in Brooklyn that intersects Broadway, where this particular station is, just to the west of Halsey Street. So the tracks you see here and the station she's just left are in fact Halsey Street. Finally. Unfortunately, this, one of the first bits of real accuracy in the video, is immediately undercut by the worst shot of the whole thing. That shot, while beautiful, is of the 7 train at one of its stations along Queens Boulevard. The problem with this is that the 7 train was built by the IRT. I guess it's fitting to end with a shot on the IRT, concluding a grand tour of all 3 companies which built the New York City subway when only one was necessary. The other problem with this shot is that it's totally fake. From where the camera is, you're looking at Long Island City and Midtown Manhattan, yet the most prominent building featured in the background is One World Trade Center, which is actually all the way down in lower Manhattan and would be way off to the left in this case. Here's a picture taken a few years ago from the same part of the line. In the background you see the Citibank building, which is also visible in the Halsey video shot, but you also see the Empire State Building, not One World Trade Center. I'm not sure I understand the rationale for photoshopping out the Empire State Building in place of the One World Trade, since the Empire State Building is arguably a stronger symbol of New York City, but hey, it's not my job. I want to be clear that I'm not faulting anybody for the criticisms that I brought up in this video. I understand that filming in the subway is incredibly difficult, and the fact that it's pulled off at all is frankly remarkable. I guess the moral of the story is check out my blog.